Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at Uncanny X-Men number 320. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be diving into the 30th anniversary of the Age of Apocolypse. And it started right here in Legion Quest Part 1 back in November of 1994. Now, X-Men have been doing pretty much an annual crossover event dating back to the late 80s. But I think this is probably the most ambitious one that they attempted. And I'm going to kind of cover it in a real-time format over the next few months. And let's see how well they actually pulled it off. Before I dive into it, I just want to give a quick shout out to all the viewer support. All your likes, comments, and shares are appreciated. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps grow the channel. It helps build this comics community and generally just helps share the love of comics. So this was a big deal. It was such a big deal that they actually made a Wizard magazine insert for this first part of the story. I mean, if you weren't already reading X-Men, they wanted your attention so badly that they reprinted the issue. Well, it came out the same month, really, but they put out this gold version of the issue with Wizard magazine. And I'm going to look at this one, but because it also has different ads inside that I think help promote the arc a little better. So if you look inside this one real quick, we get like typical ads of like fruit snacks and mail order comics. Just kind of like your typical ads for the comics at the time. But this one has more house ads in it that help promote the story a little bit more. And so I kind of want to look at those as well as the issue itself. This is a Joe Mad cover. Joe Mad had been doing X-Men for a few months, not too terribly long, maybe a year. He was bringing a manga-influenced style to these mainstream Western comics. We're starting to finally get away from the Jim Lee mold of comics that had pretty much been going strong since 1990-ish. I like the dynamics of this cover. I like your villain, who is Legion, taking on Storm here on the front. It's very dynamic, gets in your face. You definitely see that manga influence in this. And at the time, I mean, we're talking like 94, manga was making its way into America, but I don't think it had become the mainstream success here that it is today by any stretch. So Joe Mad pulling those influences in was really broadening the audience, I feel like. But let's dive in. So gold cover from the Wizard magazine version of this book. Jumps off into the action right away. If you hadn't been reading X-Men, or even if you had, I think this first couple of pages might have been a little confusing because it uses that trope of start in the middle of the action, then let's do a flashback, come back to the action. Even me just revisiting this because I hadn't really looked at the issues, right before it in so long, I felt like, oh, did I miss the first, was there like a prologue issue that I was not thinking of? But there wasn't. This is just the start of the story here, but it's jumping us off right into the action. Then we get this opening splash of Storm. We see what she's fighting, and it's Legion here. This is an odd double page splash to me because it's got this wide gutter over here. And I don't know if that was on purpose. It almost looks like it was drawn to be a full bleed page, but why does it go to the gutter? This one isn't full bleed either. I'm going to kind of take note of that as I look through the issue to see if any of the pages are full bleed, because the technology was there. We've got like the nice glossy paper. These were the deluxe editions at this point. If you got the newsstand of this, it probably had a lighter paper, like a more newsprint paper. We're establishing the gold team of X-Men. You've got Storm, Jean Grey, Bishop, and kind of over here, they kind of get lost in the middle of the page here. But Iceman and Psylocke. And they're pretty much establishing that they're getting their butts kicked at this point. And Bishop is trying to absorb the power, or they're like absorb some of his power, and so it eases up, and he can't. He's having a problem with that. And then it kind of zooms in on Storm as she starts to reflect on how they ended up in this predicament. And here's one of the first house ads that I was talking about. We've got this great Alex Ross recreation of X-Men. Here's one of the first house ads I was talking about. We've got this great Alex Ross rendition of X-Men #1. And it says, in the beginning, and then it's got some like silly pseudo-biblical way to write up, Charles Xavier had a dream and created the X-Men, yada yada. But then when you turn and you get the Sienkiewicz page of the end because there never was a beginning. That's setting up what this particular part of the story is going to be about. The sun rises in the east. So we got Scott Lobdell on the plot. Mark Waid is doing dialogue, and he does a pretty good job of the exposition needed in this, not getting too bogged down in detailed history. It's going to give us enough about Legion, who hadn't been a major player in the X titles in quite a while. He appeared first in New Mutants, and I don't think he had really been involved in much. I think he went into a coma at some point and had just been there for the longest time. So I didn't really even know much about Legion coming into this story. And I think this issue does a good job of catching you up onto who he is. Now, the penciler of this, we have the Joe Mag cover, but we get Roger Cruz and Tim Townsend doing the art on the interiors. So the Gold Team arrives in Israel, which is where Legion's mother is from, Gabrielle Haller. And they're just getting off the plane here. Another house ad. I think this one does a good job of teasing what's to come in the Age of Apocalypse. It should be noted, at this point, there had been like rumor and speculation that Marvel was canceling all the X books. And then they were going to relaunch them into something different in their own like separate universe, more or less. And the fans really didn't know exactly what that entailed at the time. So this was almost a first look. If you got the Wizard copy of this book, you got this, but you didn't get this in the standard edition. So I think this is a pretty good tease of what's going on here. But the next page is actually the full-on cover to X-Men Alpha Age of Apocalypse. So then you really get a good look at what they're gonna look like. Now, I don't recall if some of this had already been shown in like previews or advanced comics at the time, but because I wasn't really buying those or even looking through those at the time. I bought Wizard magazine and I pretty much just followed the books month to month. So Wizard would kind of tease stuff to you, but it wasn't giving everything away until, Marvel, DC, or whatever was ready. So, this is your first glance at the Age of Apocalypse. So continuing on in the story, this is the exposition part that I feel like Mark Waid does a pretty good job to keep it flowing. It introduces you to who Legion is. He's the son of Charles Xavier and Gabrielle Haller, and he's just woken up from a coma, which it references X Factor 109. I've never had that issue. I wasn't an X Factor purchaser at the time, unless it was a crossover issue, and I never went and picked that one up. It was sold out, I guess, at the time. Anyhow, but it's not labeled part of Legion Quest, so it goes through that Legion is a schizophrenic mutant, son of Charles Xavier, and every split personality he had a different power. At some point, he went into a coma, and when he woke up, he was, whole again. He wasn't having the split personalities. But then all of his powers have kind of merged and made him beyond Omega level, I guess you'd say. The X-Men have been called in to do their best. Now, I don't know why just the Gold Team shows up first. Why didn't all the X-Men come? Why didn't Xavier show up right away? I don't know, in this issue anyway. So that's all this recap you get right here. More recap here about who Legion is. Here's like the diagram of who he is and stuff. And I guess they promoted a X-Men Archives like reprint series that probably, had some of the key moments of Legion's history in it. I never picked that up, and I really haven't even read all those in New Mutants even. And then they contemplate any options to take him out, even if it's a nuclear option. This is a total Jim Lee kind of layout of a page right here, I think. The long shot with the characters, kind of in a line behind them as they head out to confront Legion in the desert of Israel. Now, it should be noted, too, that Legion purposely chose to set up his little energy dome away from civilization. So he's not completely evil or anything in this, at least so far. So the X-Men go to confront him, And Storm trying to talk to him, she's like, listen to me. He's like, all right, I'm hearing you fine, Roro. I'm just not listening to you. Like, you're beneath me, more or less. But he's like, let me kind of tell you where we're going, or elsewhere. So he blips her out. They freak out for a second. And they arrive in what appears to be the past. And you don't fully get it here exactly what it is without reading it. But he's ghostly, is showing her the moment her mother died. And it was when this plane crashed on them, or shot down and crashed and killed her mother. This is well treaded Storm origin stuff. But he's giving her the opportunity to save her here. She does. She like zips down to try to save, but isn't fast. And he's like, faster, faster. Whoops. And then all of a sudden they're back. She accuses him of it being an illusion. And he's like, oh, it was no illusion. We were there. And then he discusses how the time stream is pulling him back to mutant kind's most critical moment. A moment that can be forever remolded for the glory of us all. So now Bishop's going to try again to absorb some energy. He gets some feedback, but it distracts him enough for Jean and Iceman to hit him with a blast, which doesn't really do a whole lot. Boom. You see Roger Cruz trying to do some of the stuff Joe Mad does, like, little bigger eyes and things. He kind of pulls it off. Roger Cruz was like the fill-in guy for Joe Mad, and probably because he could ape his style a little bit. I think Joe Mad was the rising star. I don't know if he couldn't keep up with deadlines, or they just gave him breaks or whatever. And Roger Cruz was the regular filling guy, so to keep it somewhat consistent, I suppose. So they're like, what is this critical moment? And then they start thinking back to when they arrived. So now we're going to do another flashback. So the book starts out in the action, gives us a flashback of them arriving in Israel, jumps back to that moment at the beginning of the book, and now we're going to get another flashback of when they first arrived to confront Legion. Here is where he starts talking about that critical moment of years ago, Charles Xavier's began building a dream of harmony between humans and mutants. Our continued existence is a monument to that dream. But no monument, no matter how magnificent, can stand rock solid unless someone fortifies its foundation. So that's where he's alluding to something to do with Charles Xavier's dream in this critical moment. And that's when they discover he's going back in time to do something to preserve Charles Xavier's dream. And it's not spelling it out here yet. So he starts to do his time strip. Bishop tries to absorb the energy again. They kind of they're being lifted up by the energies, like pulling them in. And Storm, Psylocke, Iceman, and Bishop all get swept up into his thing, while Jean is able to like telekinetically hold herself to the ground, and she does not get swept up. And then they're gone. And that's it. And she's like, scanning for them. They're nowhere to be found. Legion is gone, and Charles Xavier now he communicates. But I guess he was having trouble getting through the psychic barriers, is what they're alluding to here. And here she says she doesn't have the strength to like stay conscious, more or less, and she passes out. Then we cut to the Shi'ar. Some blah, blah, blah about, she's sleeping and no one dare disturbs her. And all of a sudden, boom, and Gladiator's laying on the floor, and it's Jolf? How do you say his name? Jolf? Who guards the Unicron crystal. I don't know how much this character shows up throughout X-Men history. I really only remember him from that initial Shi'ar story with the Unicron crystal, and he was there to kind of guard it, and he punches Wolverine basically out of the action. So he's immensely powerful enough to take out Gladiator, which she points out, why did you even leave your post? This must be something critical. And he's saying, oh, it's nothing major, my queen. Save the end of all that is. Continued in Time Lost. So now the book is going to continue into the adjectiveless X-Men title for the crossover. Now, Legion Quest does not continue through all of the X titles at this point. It's really just contained to the two core X-Men books, and then there's one that's branded, a cable issue that's branded Legion Quest, and Wolverine 90, which isn't branded Legion Quest, but I am going to cover it because it's just such an awesome issue. So our crossover build up here is starting kind of slow. At least it's self-contained into just a couple of books, but of course when Age of Apocalypse starts, it's all of the X-Men books. Wanted to point out this is something too that is not in the standard edition. This is mentioning a gold, or not a gold, but a foil card that is going to be inserted into some of the December shipping issues of X-Men. So if there were packs of cards included in those issues, I didn't open them then. Maybe I'll open them now. I don't know. We'll see. Also, this letters page is horrific. This was a terrible, terrible design flaw of the 90s. It's like they figured out how to do these like backgrounds, these like textured backgrounds, and put text over it, and it made it so hard to read. I mean, it's hard to read then, and it's definitely harder for my mid-40s eyes today. So, but I just wanted to mention that because we actually are going to see this terrible design idea going forward through the whole Age of Apocalypse. Who am I? That's a cool little tease there too. And this is telling you that what's happening in the other X books this month. X-Mail. And then you got this back page which tells you who the characters are on the Age of Apocalypse, insert in the middle. This also is not in the standard issue. So that's it for Legion Quest Part 1. My goal is to cover this in, like I said, in a real-time fashion. So I'm going to try to get one video out a week covering this story. When I get to the Age of Apocalypse issues, I'm not going to cover each issue individually. What I will plan to do is for that week, I will cover the books that would have come out that week to the best of my ability to group them together that way. And so those videos might be a little longer. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on each issue because, I am going to be going through 2 to 3 issues in a video. So those will move kind of quick, but I wanted to give that feeling of like, this is what it was like when the books were coming out on a week-to-week basis and following the story weekly, more or less. And it's going to last a while, so stick with me. I hope to be doing this at least for the next few months. And until next time, read your comics. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my breakdown of this issue, you can support the channel by hitting subscribe. It costs you nothing and helps other comic fans find the channel. You can also visit readyourcomics.com for cool merch, like this. Read Your Comics isn't just a brand, it's a mantra. And when you wear a Read Your Comics shirt, you are helping spread the word. For more classic comics conversation, be sure to follow me on Instagram at read.your.comics. And if you're still here, why not watch one of my older videos? Here or here.